Hello and welcome back to Supposedly Fun. My name is Greg and I'm here today to do my Friday Reads video. This is where I wrap up the week in reading and talk about any bookish things that have either gone on over the past week or that are coming up. In this case, coming up. It was a very interesting reading week. It started off very slow and then over the last 24 hours really picked up. And I managed to finish 2 books. I have one other book that I am in the process of reading, and I have plans for what I'm going to do next. We'll talk about all of that when we do the actual Friday Reads portion of the video. First, I want to mention a couple of things. I'm going to do not Booker long list predictions, but I'm going to talk about a wish list. So just a short list of books that I would be happy to see. I don't want to do a prediction. I'm sort of having fun sitting back and letting other people predict what the long list for the Booker Prize will be, and not expending a lot of thought and time and energy on it myself, but I will sort of wade in a little bit. The first thing I want to mention is just a thank you, because everyone was really extremely kind. In my last video, I mentioned that I had crossed 10,000 subscribers, and it feels weird to me still, but everybody was really nice, and we will be figuring out a sort of celebration video. A couple people really did want a Q&A, and a couple people suggested some other things. And I think some of the other things sound like they will be a little bit easier, but also a little bit more fun to do. It was suggested, I think Kurt Anderson was the first person to suggest it, and then some other people did, that Joel and I should do sort of like a cooking vlog. I think that would be fun, and I've talked to Joel. He thinks that sounds fun. So at some point over the next week or 2 weeks, you know, whenever we can, we will film a video where we do that. And then I think while we do the cooking vlog, we might do some conversation starters, not a Q&A, but just some fun little things that we can use as discussion points. I think that will be a lot of fun. And since Joel is sort of part of this channel now, he can't get away from it. It'd be nice to have him as part of the celebration. The other thank you is all the support with Jamie. We got on the road on Saturday. I fell wildly behind on comments because we were traveling on the day that my Friday Reads video posted. And we were still traveling when my first video of the week, the 25 best books of the last 25 years, posted. So I had fallen wildly behind on comments, and then I managed to catch up. But a lot of people were very supportive. So we did have our follow-up appointment with Jamie. Jamie is my dog. She is being treated for a nasal tumor. There was definitely a good news, bad news situation when we had the appointment on Monday, and I don't really want to get into specifics about it right now. We have to have a follow-up appointment to talk to our vet about some options and what we can do, and once we know a little bit more, we can go into it a little bit. But the good news was Jamie's nasal tumor responded very well to the radiation treatment that she had earlier this year. So that is the good news. I will take that as a win. And yeah, we'll hopefully figure out the rest, and you'll hear about it. And as I said, I had posted my 25 best books of the last 25 years. Great response to that. I've had a lot of people share their list, which I really wanted to see. So I was very glad to see all of those. It feels like the book that most people mention in their list that I haven't read yet is actually The Known World by Edward P. Jones, which is part of my Pulitzer Prize project. So I'm kind of thinking I might need to bump that one up, but I'm forming plans for what I'm going to do with my Pulitzer Prize project for the rest of the year, because I had been thinking that I wanted to do a different book next and make that the focus of it. But there are a lot of Pulitzer Prize winners who are releasing books in the second half of the year. So I'm thinking about whether or not I want to do one of them. And now The Known World has made a case for itself. So I haven't really decided where I'm going to go with that next. In terms of a Booker wish list, again, I really just thought about books that I have either read or I'm really excited to read. And I think actually 3 out of the 4 books that I wrote down are books that I have not read yet, but I'm kind of really excited about. So I think if they make it onto the long list for the Booker Prize, which will be announced on Tuesday, and I will be doing a reaction. Hopefully I'll be able to film it on Tuesday and post it as soon as I possibly can. we'll see how all of that goes. So, my wish list is, of course, Demon Copperhead by Barbara Kingsolver. I have been a huge fan of that book. If you follow along, you absolutely know that. It was my favorite book that I read last year. It was a finalist for the Women's Prize, and I really wanted it to win, even though it had won the Pulitzer. It co-won the Pulitzer this year, and I was really rooting for it. I freaked out when it co-won the Pulitzer this year, and then I really wanted it to go on and win the Women's Prize, and I didn't think it would, and then it did. It was huge. So I don't think it's going to go for the hat trick. I don't think it will win the Booker Prize, because it feels like with the Pulitzer and the Women's Prize, it would be extraordinary for Demon Copperhead to go on and win the Booker. I would love for it to at least be in the mix. So if Demon Copperhead doesn't at least make the long list for the Booker Prize, I will be extremely disappointed. Demon Copperhead was actually released last year. However, it was after the cutoff for the Booker Prize. So although it was released last year, it is in contention for the Booker this year. And I'm assuming that because Jessamine Ward's new book, Let Us Descend, is not releasing until October, that will be out of contention for the Booker this year. So the next three books on my sort of Booker wish list are books that I'm really excited about, and two of them which I'm hoping to read imminently, and one that I just kind of want to read before the end of the year. The first one is Wandering Souls by Cecile Penn. This was longlisted for the Women's Prize, and it felt like this is the book that most people, at least who comment on my videos, were sort of devastated to not see in the shortlist. And it's supposed to be really sad, but I'm very much looking forward to reading it. And actually, I have a copy of the book on my shelf, but I peeked this morning and it looks like it has shown up on Scribd. The audio has. So I am sort of debating whether or not it's going to be my next audiobook or the one after. I think it's probably going to be the one after, but we'll get to that in the actual Friday Reads portion. But Wandering Souls by Cecile Penn is a book that I've heard a lot of really great things about, and I am therefore really excited to read. And because I'm really excited about it, I would love to see it pop up on another list. So I'd be very happy to see it on the Booker long list. And then there's This Other Eden by Paul Harding. He is another Pulitzer family of authors person. He won for Tinkers. And I want to read Tinkers for sure. It's going to be part of my project, so I'll have to. But I think I want to read This Other Eden first. I've heard so many really good things about it. I've heard really good things about Tinkers as well, actually. So that's another one that I'm hoping to read imminently. I think I might read one book that I got from the library, and then I want This Other Eden to be the next book that I read, but we'll see how all of that goes. And then the final book on my Booker wish list is In Memoriam by Alice Winn. I know Jen the Librarian was not a fan, but by and large, most people who I've seen talk about this book online have really enjoyed this book. And it sounds really interesting to me, so I would still like to read it. It's not imminently on my pile of possibilities, but it is something that I want to read before the end of the year. I decided I would just limit myself to 4 books for my Booker wish list, because obviously Demon Copperhead is one that I've read that I would really like to see there. And Wandering Souls, This Other Eden, and In Memoriam are books that I definitely want to read and am excited about. And because I'm excited about them, I would love to see them on it. But I actually most love discovering new books on the Booker long list. So I'm limiting it to 4. 1, because I don't want to do a full prediction, but 2, because I'm most looking forward to finding new books off of the long list. Or maybe the long list will get me to reconsider something that I had not really thought about reading or something like that. So I'm most looking forward to the surprises that are going to come with the Booker long list, which will be announced next week, and I will be doing a reaction. I also want to mention, so since I crossed 10,000 subscribers, I've really been thinking about how I haven't discovered a lot of new channels recently. I've definitely reverted to sort of relying on the comfort of channels that I know I like because the world is so stressful and there's just so much going on. But I did find a fun new channel. I've only watched 2 videos off of it, and I wanted to recommend it. It is called Sniffing the Sheets. Seems like an odd name, but who am I to judge? I named my channel Supposedly Fun, and that confuses people all the time. So I've watched 2 videos, the mid-year book Freakout and just a recent reads, which featured my beloved The Secret Lives of Church Ladies. So fun new channel, brand new, I think only started in March, and I will have a link to the channel down below so you can check it out, because I want to try to get back in the habit of finding new channels and helping other people find new channels. So I will hopefully be doing more of that. Let's get to the actual Friday Reads portion of this video. The first book that I finished was actually the last book that I started this week. It's an interesting thing. I ended up wanting to reread Last Call, A True Story of Love, Lust, and Murder in Queer New York by Elon Green. I had actually already read this book the year in which it was released, which I think was 2021. But I've been watching the docu-series that has been adapted from this on Max in the United States. And it is fascinating. It is pretty different from the book, but we watched the 3rd episode on Monday or Tuesday, I don't remember which, and I cried. It was really emotional. And that was when I said, you know what, I am going to go back and read this book, because the audio of it is on Scribd. So I went and I did that, and I tore through it. I think I started it Tuesday night, and then but I finished it either before bed last night or this morning. I don't remember what is time. I think I finished it this morning. And the book is good. The docu-series on Max is better. It leans into some themes that are present in the book, but they're just sort of passing threads. The docu-series really latches on to the queer community and what it was going through at the time. Hate crimes had been on the rise because of HIV and AIDS, and just in general, they were on the rise. And ways in which the NYPD did not properly investigate the case and did not properly coordinate with other police departments from the areas in which body parts were discovered. It's a gruesome, gruesome crime. One thing I do like about the book is that it focuses a lot more on the victims. It does get to the killer in the last part of the book and explain a little bit about him, because, you know, when Hallie Rubenfeld did the same thing for The Five, Jack the Ripper is so known that she can really remove him from the equation completely. You can't quite do that with this. So it does talk about him at the end, but it is mostly about the victims and their lives and sort of giving them their story back. But the docuseries leans even harder to that and sort of shows the ripple effects of the trauma of these losses that happened. And I found that really interesting. And that is where in episode 3, I just sobbed at one point. It is a really well done series on Max, and it made me curious to go back and reread the book. So I did, and if you're watching Last Call, I would love to hear what you are thinking of it as well. I have been loving it. Then I had brought Dearborn, stories by Ghassan Zeineddine, with me to Pullman, and then just didn't read the whole time we were there. I had only read one story in here when I filmed my last Friday Reads. I think I had read 2 more stories before we left on Saturday, and that was it until we got home on Monday. And then I think I picked it up Monday night after we got back and read another story before bed, and then Tuesday made a good chunk of progress, and then yesterday I actually managed to make a huge chunk of progress, and then I finished Dearborn this morning. I really liked this book. I know short stories are a bit of a tough sell for people, but I really liked this book. And if you have enjoyed Night of the Living Res by Morgan Talty, this is a good book for you to look at. It will be published on September 5th by Tin House. I actually found this because I liked Night of the Living Res so much that I watched Tin House's catalog, and this jumped out to me from it, and they were kind enough to send me an advanced reader's copy. So thank you to Tin House. But for sure, if you liked Night of the Living Res, this is a good book for you. If you like My Beloved, The Secret Lives of Church Ladies, this is a good book for you. If you are waiting for something to read or want something to read while you wait for Jhumpa Lahiri's new story collection that will be coming out in October, this could be a good book for you. I would absolutely recommend it. The stories, as you can tell, are all set in the town of Dearborn, Michigan. The significance of this is that there is a large Middle Eastern community in Dearborn and the sort of surrounding towns. It's right outside of Michigan. And actually, I had just seen an episode of Taste the Nation's second season that discusses Dearborn and the Middle Eastern community there and how they have sort of tried to keep their culture alive. And they sort of explain that Henry Ford, way back in the day, wanted to hire immigrants as workers because he knew he wouldn't have to pay them a whole lot, but his sort of racism meant that he did not really want to hire black people. He didn't really want to hire Irish immigrants or Italian immigrants or Chinese immigrants. So he sort of actively recruited people to come from the Middle East. And that is why all this time later, you have a large Middle Eastern community living outside of Detroit. The book doesn't go into how these people ended up there, but it does very much deal with the fact that a lot of them, at least in the beginning, are reliant on Ford for jobs or just motor companies and then they eventually try to strike out on their own, maybe purchase their own business. This is a book that is very heavily about immigration. The stories aren't linked, not in the way that they are in Night of the Living Res, where they all sort of follow a similar theme, but just jump back and forth chronologically. But there are references to characters and stores and places that do sort of recur throughout the book. So when you read the first story and then you get way further into the book, there will be a reference to a character from the first book, and you're just kind of like, I remember that. It's fun. So it's not linked necessarily, but they do definitely exist in the same universe. But they all move around in the community. It follows men, it follows women, it follows heterosexual people, it follows someone who's sort of experimenting with gender and doesn't really have a label for how they feel about that experimentation. But this is a really interesting collection. Obviously, it deals with immigration and the sort of cultural divides that develop between people who immigrate and the first generation of Americans who are born here, which is something that I can relate to, not because I'm first generation, I'm not, but my mother is for a first generation American in her family. And there were definitely divides between her parents who had immigrated to the United States and her brothers and sisters and the way they lived their lives and the way they really quickly adapted to life in the United States in ways that her parents never quite did. So that is definitely found in here. This is also a book about trauma and the way it sort of ripples through time. And it's about home and ways in which you long for something you have, but you know it doesn't exist anymore. And it deals with complications about what happens when a lot of people aren't able to go back and visit their original home when it is undergoing war and revolution. And that is something that the characters in this book deal with. It deals with financial problems. It deals with ways in which one of the stories is about a man who teaches his son to evade the IRS by hiding money in frozen chickens, which is something that he learned from Lebanon, where he grew up. And then he took it here, and then he teaches his son to do this, and then there's a interesting twist on that behavior and what it teaches to the son as someone who is sort of American and has that American attitude about things and where it spins out from there. It's really interesting. These are, I think, very well done short stories. Again, they're not linked, so if you don't like short stories, it might be a tough sell for you. But I would absolutely recommend this book. It comes out on September 5th. I really liked it a lot. I thought it was very well done. I loved the way it moved around to different parts of the community. You have people who have been in the United States a long time, people who have just come here, people who have experienced trauma as the result of a war, people who have experienced abuse, and different gender experiences and sexuality experiences, and religious experiences, all manner of things. I found this book to be really fascinating, and I would absolutely recommend it. Again, if you liked Night of the Living Rez, for sure. If you liked The Secret Lives of Church Ladies, this is a good option. It's not too far of a cry, even from James McBride or Louise Erdrich. I think if you are a fan of either of those authors, this could work as well. I would love for more people to read this. I'll have a link to bookshop.org where you can pre-order it if you would like. And I just can't wait to talk to people about this book when it is released in roughly a month's time. It's just a fantastic, fantastic book, and I would love for more people to discover it and read it. On our drive to Pullman, Washington, Joel and I had decided that we were going to listen to the audio of Red, White, and Royal Blue by Casey McQuiston. This is because there is a film adaptation of this coming out, and we definitely wanted something cute and sweet and romantic that we could listen to. That's sort of our MO on trips like this. We listened to 2 romance books when we went to Pullman and when we came back the last time we had to go there. And it did the trick. The only thing is, because this book is longer than I thought it was, we aren't done yet. And because we're both working during the day and in different places, we have not managed to finish since we've been back. We listen to a bit of a chapter when we have dinner, and that's the only time we can really manage to get some listening in to this book. If you are unfamiliar, this actually mostly follows Alex, who is the son of the President of the United States of America. He accidentally has a confrontation with the Prince of England, or one of the princes of England, and in order to fix this from a PR standpoint, he and the prince are forced to spend a lot of time together to sort of show media that they are friends and that there is no animosity between them. And wouldn't you know it, once they start spending time together, romantic sparks start flying, of course. And it's a really cute book. It is surprisingly long, surprisingly very political, and willing to jump into the political ramifications of Alex's mother running for a second term and how she needs to situate herself and present herself, as well as the political ramifications of, say, a prince being gay and what it would mean in this world that is very similar to ours, but is obviously a little bit different. It's cute. Hopefully we'll be finishing this soon. I can't remember. I think we have roughly 2 hours left in the audio. Maybe if we just go for a drive over the weekend, we can get a good chunk of this done. My sister had sent me a copy of the book because she read it about a year ago, and she lives in New York City, so she has very limited space for books. So her MO with books is that once she finishes it, she will send it to someone who she thinks will like it. And she sent this one to me because she knows I have a soft spot for queer romances. She only keeps the books that are like 10 out of 10, definitely a new favorite type thing. Those are the only ones that she will make room for in her permanent library. So this one made its way over to me, and we're listening to it on audio, but I still have a copy of the book. So hopefully I'll be finishing with that soon. In the meantime, I have been considering what I will do next. Like I said, I really want to read Wandering Souls and This Other Eden, and I need to get back to Stone Butch Blues, but I think I need a little extra time before I get back to Stone Butch Blues. So I decided I need to do these 2 books, and I'm probably going to do them, one in print, one in audio, before I get to This Other Eden and Wandering Souls. But here's my game plan. I got this book, Dear Committee Members, a novel by Julie Schumacher, from the library. This was discussed on, I think it was the New York Times Book Review podcast recently. I think there's a 3rd book in the series that was just released, and I went back to the beginning. This should read very quickly. It is under 200 pages, and it's an epistolary novel. So basically, I believe the story unfolds in a series of letters that are sent back and forth between a professor and, I don't know if it's only letters from him or if it is letters from the organization as well. It looks like the first 3 or 4 letters are all from this protagonist named Jason Fittker, who is a professor. So the story sort of unfolds through the letters that he is sending to people. It's supposed to be really funny and good. And I think this will read very quickly. So this will probably be my next print book. Once I am done, I will probably turn to this other Eden in print. And in terms of audio, like I said, Wandering Souls by Cecile Pinn is available on Scribd. However, for the month of July, I'm supposed to be reading Howard's End for the EM Forster read-along. I'll have a link to that down below. And I don't want to fall behind. So rather than try to catch up to this next month when we'll have a book from the Queer TBR tackle that we are also going to be reading, I think I'm going to try to get Howard's End out on audio. I really debated whether or not I wanted to read the physical book. It's hard to find good audios of EM Forster books. I don't know why that is. I don't know what is wrong with the universe that it feels like we can't get these right. Because part of why I didn't end up listening to A Room with a View on audio was that I couldn't find an audio that I liked. And I really struggled listening to some samples of the audios, and I found one that is narrated by a woman that sounds like it'll be okay. So I'm going to try to do it that way so I don't fall behind on the read-along. And then when I'm done with this, I'm hoping that I can turn to Wandering Souls. I had been listening to I Know Why the Caged Bird Sings by Maya Angelou. And I took too much time, basically. There were a lot of holds on that book, so I couldn't renew it. I mentioned in my last Friday Reads video, which I filmed on Thursday of last week, that I think I thought I had a week. It turned out I had 6 days. And with everything going on with us needing to leave to get Jamie to her follow-up appointment and everything that happened since, I just didn't get any listening done. And by the time I only had 2 days left in the hold, I just said, you know what, I'm not going to finish this, and I don't want to rush it just to finish it now. So I ended up returning it early and got on the hold list again. And the hold list is months long. So I'm back on the list. We'll see what happens. But that's the reading plan right now. That is everything that is coming up. I'd love to hear what you've been up to this week, what you've been watching, reading, and loving, and all of that. Let me know in the comment section down below. As always, I really appreciate your time, and I will be back. Until next time, happy reading.